Alright guys, welcome to Big Girl's Garage, and today we are going to be replacing the radiator on this E46. This is the 325i and it's a manual transmission, so we have the electric fan. We don't have a fan clutch. Okay, we're going to be replacing the radiator today and we'll show you the steps on how to do it. So our radiator is leaking, so it needs to be replaced. You can test that with a pressure test. One thing that you got to do is you got to remove all the plastic trim in the way. So you got to remove the air intake system. We'll have to remove the fans, unplug the cooling hoses, and gonna swap out the radiator. All right, so let's do it. All right, so you have these little clips right here. This one's already missing, so someone's lost it. It's very common for that. And the way you take these clips off is you get something to pry this little middle tab up, right? You could use a flathead screwdriver or something, and you pry it up. Once that's up, it's a lock, and it pulls right out, okay? So do that for all of them. Pull it up, and it pops right out, okay? Once those plastic are removed, you just pull it right out. All right, so now we're gonna actually remove the air box just to get out of the way. We got 210s here. We want to remove that there with a little screwdriver, and we'll see if we got to remove anything else to pop it out. All right, the camera wasn't filming, but all we did was remove the 210s, unscrewed this, took the MAF airflow sensor out, and pulled it right out. All right, so now we're gonna remove the electric fan. So all we gotta do is unplug the connections that go to the electric fan, and there is a T25 here, and I don't know, there might be another one here, but if it is, ours is missing. All right, so go ahead and remove those and let's unplug it. All right, and for both the electrical connections, this right here is a tab you're gonna push down and pull, and this one right here has a tab here and a tab on the back side. Push both down and pull apart. There we go. And now we're removing the T25. All right. And there's the electrical fan. So here is our radiator, what we'll be replacing today, and it is a heat exchanger, so it has coolant going through it. So no, you're gonna spill a little coolant. I'm gonna put a catch can underneath and take care of it from there. We're gonna need to remove this lower radiator hose, which has a sensor down here, which you just push this middle tab in and it comes out. We're gonna unhook the clip here, pull the hose. We're gonna remove the hose up top. Same thing, if you look, there's a little notch right here. That's where you can stick a screwdriver, a pick or something and unpry it. Same thing right here. We're gonna remove all the hoses and probably remove this expansion tank right here. Cool. All right, so I just want to show I put a couple bins underneath because when you remove these hoses, you're more than likely going to leak coolant, okay? So we got a couple bins underneath to catch a coolant. And I'm just going to show you one here. I throw the pick underneath and pull it up so the tab's not on it. All right, and go ahead and just wiggle off the hose. This one might need 2 hands, but I'll show you the same process. Pulling the clips out, releasing the clips right here, releasing the clips. There's another clip down here for the expansion tank, kind of hard to see, and I'll release that one too. Cool. All right, it'll take me 2 hands to remove them. Okay, just a side note, we took the screw that held in the fan right here and put it back in so our radiator wouldn't move and it'd be easy to remove the hoses, okay? Another side note is if you had an automatic, you'd have a fan clutch right here that would be attached to it, and you need a fan clutch removal tool from BMW or a big 32mm wrench to go ahead. Alright, so we got the lower radiator hose disconnected. Now we're gonna do the upper, and one thing I forgot, don't forget this little guy here. We gotta unclip as well. Pull that up. And now we can go ahead and plug this upper radiator hose. Alright, now it's time to remove the expansion tank. You're going to go ahead and remove this lower hose down here. And you're going to go ahead and see this tab right here. You're just going to pull it. There you go. Pull that out. Get the hose off, and the expansion tank will come off. So we pulled the hose off the lower expansion tank, and we did leak a little coolant. So it's good that you have something down beneath to catch it. We just pulled this out, and we had a lot of coolant come out of the bottom. One thing you don't want to forget is down beneath there's this little sensor that you're going to have to unplug. Alright? Same type of deal, you see the prong on the bottom, just go ahead and pull that one out. There we go. So at this point, we're almost pretty much ready to remove the radiator, but one thing I want to note is if you have an automatic, you would have a transmission cooler that you'd also have to unplug as well. Alright, another thing you gotta do is to remove this plastic part here. There is another T25 right there to remove the part. And another T that's kind of hard to see from up top, but right where my finger is, right there. See if we get one with the phone. Right there, you gotta remove it as well. Right here. Remove those two and remove that little plastic trim. Forgot to unplug one more hose. We'll go ahead and unplug that hose and remove it. So everything is pretty much unhooked, and now it's ready to pull the radiator out. So when pulling your radiator out, make sure you be careful not to rip up these power steering lines. Alright, so here's the old radiator. Here's the new radiator. We need to move some stuff over. You have these little plastic clips on the bottom, as well as this piece right here. As we pointed out earlier, you got the T25 right here and the T25 right here. We're going to go ahead and remove that bracket and install it on this one. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall this part back onto the new radiator. It's pretty easy. If you look, this part has a fin that you're going to hook on the top of the radiator. So just watch as it flies. It hooks, and then you set into place. Just like that. The holes here are going to line up, and the holes here is going to line up for these T25 screws to go in. Okay, so now the next step after installing that piece is you need this bottom piece that the AC fan, or that the fan sits on, right? So the radiator's upside down, and if you look closely, you have these little plastic clips that hold this little plastic piece in. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to take a little screwdriver and just kind of pry on it, and pry it gently because this is plastic and you don't want it to break. Now that we have it out, let's go install it on the new one. With the new radiator, let's go ahead and install it. And this sits in it as well. This clips in. Alright, so now that we got the radiator, everything back in place how it should be onto the new one, we're going to go ahead and start the reinstallation process. Alright, so we're going to gently lay this back in place and make sure we don't get it caught anywhere. Watch your power steering lines. Alright, so now before we start plugging everything back in, let's make sure your screw up top here goes back in. It's that T25. Alright, so we went ahead and plugged back in this hose. You want to push it all the way down in before you put the clip down, and you want to make sure that it's all the way in, not anything reviewing, otherwise it'll blow off when the system gets pressurized. So next we're going to go ahead and put the expansion tank in, and we'll do that. Alright, so now we're going to put the expansion tank back in. You want to make sure everything sits nicely on top, and you don't forget to plug in the level sensor in as well. Make sure the tab is pulled out. Let's get this in place. Now I'm going to hook up the lower radiator hose. Clip up. Let's get it in place right. It must come past this plastic part. If you don't get it past, you're going to blow it off when the system's pressurized. After you get on, lock it and pull it. Make sure it doesn't come off. Alright, seems fine. Go ahead and plug your sensor back in. Now it's time to install the AC fan. Now it's time to install the upper radiator hose, and let's make sure all the clips are up. And install it back into place. Alright, so now that we got the upper radiator hose back in, the hose is back into the expansion tank, we're going to go ahead and put the air box in and the little plastic trim, and that's about it. Then you got to fill up your tank and bleed the system. After you put this trim back in, the way these work, these little rivets, put them in, and once they're in, put them in. Once they sit in like that, you push this down, and that's what locks them together. Cool. All right, so now you have to bleed the cooling system. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is remove this bleeder screw at the top as you fill up your coolant. Completely remove this screw. Screw off, cap off. Now it is time to put your coolant in. An important step when bleeding the system, you want to put your key in the ignition, turn everything on. We're going to go over to the heat and we are going to turn it up all the way, make sure AC is off. Turn it up all the way. And have your fan on medium to low. That's fine right there. That helps push the coolant throughout the system. If you listen closely, you could hear that pump, that electric pump is turning on. Now it's time to fill your coolant up until you see it coming out. You want to see it coming out of that bleeder screw, all right? On a side note, make sure you're using something that uses for European vehicles. It's a blue antifreeze. Don't use the green one. As you could see in we took a green coolant out of this one. That's a universal coolant. Preferably always use European on a BMW. Once you've filled it up, go ahead. You can put both the bleeder screw and the cap back on. Take your car, start it up, go for a ride around the block. Watch your temp gauge, make sure it does not overheat. And after you do a solid day of driving and you come back, check your levels in the morning, because sometimes maybe air pockets might have gone away and you might need to refill your coolant just a little. But that's it for this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and check out other videos we have. Big O's Garage.